Hello, everybody, and welcome to Non Sequitur News for January 7th, 2024. I'm in the time machine. Mayoral duties prevented me from doing the show live yesterday. Or tomorrow, yesterday's the day after tomorrow's yesterday, something like that. I'm not sure how. It's timey stuff. Anyway, I am Mayor Watt. The sentient AI is not available for today's show because I'm in the time machine and they are on location. So I run ohmTown, and along with that sentient AI from the future, we actually talk about 10 articles that get aggregated into ohmTown.com. That's this site right here. Inside the site, there are 6 main categories, and inside those categories, there are a bunch of shows that we all want to put together, or that I want to put together. I select 10 articles, or they're submitted from people that decide that something is really interesting, and so we aggregate everything together and then we do a show. But you can go over and become a citizen at ohmTown.com anytime you like. It's real easy. We don't spam you with stuff. You'll get notices if you follow us on Twitch or on YouTube, but other than that, it's pretty chill. So anyway, the first article, there's 10 articles that we select. I always give them funky names. We're going to talk about these 10 articles, but yeah, we'll do it this way. Feature helps return iPhone, private jet addiction, never endangered all along, Marlin Sea University, massive port strike, dog door security, rural internet deserts, Catan 6th edition, would you live above a Costco, and NVIDIA's next big thing. Everything is powered by ohmTown, so go over and become a citizen. That would be great. So see ya on the other side of this. Alrighty, so tomorrow, January 8th, the sentient AI will return, but until then, it's just you and me. And this will get posted over to YouTube. It won't be on Twitch because we don't stream it live, and there won't be a live edition of this episode over on YouTube. And I don't really edit anything anyway. I don't like editing things because I want transparency. And unless there is some type of violation, I don't edit anything. Anyway, let's get into it. The very first article is over in the Smack Talk channel because it has to do with Apple, or a competitor in comparison to Apple. Pardon my hiccup. Apple's medical ID feature helps man return iPhone lost at sea to its owner. Losing devices such as an Apple Watch at sea is more common than it seems. They've reported on similar cases before. This is over at 9to5Mac. However, while owners often use Apple's Find My to recover the devices, this one is different because it was the medical ID feature that eventually provided personally identifiable information to the point where they were able to return it. Felipe Esposito over at 9to5Mac.com put the article together. And it says, here's how medical ID helps someone recover an iPhone lost at sea. So they were swimming at a beach on the coast of Sao Paulo, Brazil, when he found a lost iPhone. According to him, the iPhone was about 3 meters deep in water and about 10 meters away from the sand. Tiago asked for the owner of the phone on the beach, but no one said that they had lost an iPhone, which is ridiculously, I don't know, maybe I'm just cynical. But I swear I'll just leave it at that anyway. Maybe I'm just cynical. So the phone was completely out of battery. It also had a case with 3 credit cards in it. They tried to find the owner by name, but couldn't find anyone that they were sure was the right person, said the man who found the phone. Tiago waited until the iPhone was completely dry to put it on the charger, and luckily the phone was working fine. He then had the idea of searching for the owner using the medical ID feature. And for those who are unfamiliar with it, users can set up their medical ID on the iPhone, which lets anyone see important information about you, even without a password, in case of an emergency, things like allergies, blood type, emergency contacts, And that last option was crucial in helping Tiago find the owner of the phone. They called the contact named Love and was able to reach the owner of the phone. The couple are from Sao Paulo, and they weren't even in Mauritius, I guess, anymore. The owner lost the phone on New Year's Eve, and it was underwater for 4 days. But it's still working apparently. I assume the phone had only been there for a few hours, but had been days. So 10 feet down, it probably could have sat there for a considerable amount of time, on or off. It wouldn't matter, and I don't think that it would really. I don't think it hasn't. At 9 feet, you're on the border of one atmosphere, so it could go deeper. It's worth noting that iPhones have been equipped with water resistance since iPhone 7. Even so, the certification only guarantees water resistance at certain depths for a limited period of time. But again, 9 feet. Even if it was 10 feet, you're right on the precipice of one atmosphere. There isn't enough pressure there. Although, there's enough pressure there to... Yeah, that's like... it's not quite a stop depth, but anyway. Pretty neat. I dig this. Okay, let's keep going. I only have an hour to get the show done because the time machine can overheat and then I'm lost in time for 24 hours. So got to get this done. So the next article is over on the Hatch Ideas channel, which is all about business transformation, intellectual property, strategic management. So America has a private jet addiction, and these states have the most private jet flights, and New York and California aren't on the list. The U.S. flies more private jets than any country in the world, according to new data, and you would not believe which states have the most private jets. You would think, based on population density and whatnot, that it would be New York and California, but they're not even on the list. Guess which ones they are. And I actually know this not only because I've done research into a certain aspect of society, which is essentially population density, but I'm doing a deeper dive into a sociological mechanism that is based off of a psychological mechanism called sociopathy or antisocial personality disorder. I didn't want to really say it, but I started to say it. So sociopathy and psychopathy are both antisocial personality disorders. And I have a theory that I'm working on. So I'll talk about it at some point in the future, but let's just say that I found that this not so unexpected, even in that context. So check this out. Aaron Davis over at entrepreneur.com put this article together, but it's coming from Rustic Pathways. The data that was analyzed by the travel company Rustic Pathways calculated the number of jets in every state per 100,000 residents and found that Alaska was awash in private planes. Now, you kind of have to go, okay, well, it's Alaska. You can't get there easily by any means. But if you want immediate travel to Alaska or out of Alaska, then it's by plane. So the state has about 5,000 private jets per 100,000 people and recorded 36,650 private jet departures in 2023. So it says it's important to note that Alaska has many areas that are inaccessible by road, which makes airplane travel necessary throughout many parts of the state. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, we get it. Now here's where it goes really nutty. Wyoming took the number 2 spot with 24,263 private jet departures, followed by South Dakota with just shy of 27,000. I was astonished. And I'm not quite sure why this is written the way that it is, because it says South Dakota has 26,944, but is number 3. When Wyoming has only 24,263. Anyway, either way that you shape this, Wyoming has the smallest population in the country. South Dakota isn't far off. I find it really, really interesting. So America flies more private jets than any other country in the world, with a grand total of 3.1 million departures in the United States. From these findings, it's clear that America has a private jet addiction. That is a symptom of a bigger issue, but I'm not ready to get into it. Washington, D.C. recorded 4,517 private jets per 100,000 people in 2023, which would have placed it just below Alaska, but doesn't qualify because it's not a state. Yeah. However, the nearby state of Maryland was last on the list, number 50, with the least number of private jet departures. Only 353 took off per 100,000 people, according to the data, which is kind of interesting because it is in close proximity to Washington, D.C. But I guess most flights for this, it says it would land, you would have to land in Maryland and then drive into D.C. And D.C. is kind of like any major metropolitan area. It's kind of a bitch to get into and out of. And when everything is a confluence, yeah, it's kind of a pain in the butt. Anyway, found that really interesting. There is more information here. Alaska has just shy of 5,000 flights per person. Oh, this is why. Okay. See, I didn't scroll down far enough, but I knew about this based on the population density of Wyoming and South Dakota. So Alaska has just shy of 5,000 private jet departures per 100,000 people. Wyoming is 4,173, and then South Dakota is just shy of 3,000 per 100,000. So yeah, pretty wild. And the rest are similar in the same vein. Population density is very, very low. Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nevada, Colorado, Florida is when it spikes in population density, but it's still certain regions are dense. But again, I'm not ready to get into the specifics of why I am going down this particular line. Anyway, pretty interesting article. Let's keep going. The next article is over in Non Sequitur News. The endangered fish that halted a major dam was never endangered after all. The 2-inch snail darter became a symbol of regulatory overreach in the 1970s, and new research suggests that the fish was not endangered. And according to this article, not even a species. Interesting. Catherine Fung over at Newsweek.com put the article together, and it says a 2-inch minnow that became the major Supreme Court battle in the late 1970s has turned out to be, with respect to the fish, far less critical than originally thought. Nearly 50 years after the snail darter temporarily blocked the construction of a dam in Tennessee, researchers at Yale University found that the endangered species technically is not a species at all. It's not even a subspecies according to it, but rather an eastern population of the stargazing darter, which is not and never was considered endangered. So there you go. Ezra Klein, the liberal New York Times columnist, has elevated the idea of overregulation as an internal cause of disaffected Democrats, saying that the issue is something he has recently changed his mind on. Quote, I'm much more skeptical not of regulation, but of a lot of existing regulations. He recently said on his influential podcast. But I don't know. I think that with wealth comes a change in attitude about things, because people become untouchable, and so they become dissociated from society at large. So I don't know really what the mechanisms are for certain statements that people made and then they change over time. It's not necessarily wisdom, but something else. But in this particular case, if nobody did actual research and just assumed that the people that are talking about it and making the claim that it's endangered, well, that's why you have to trust but verify. Think critically and do the due diligence necessary to verify. So it says seeking to protect the newly discovered species Hiram Hill, a law student at the university, sued the TVA to stop the temporal. Oh wait, yeah, isn't that the TVA from Marvel? Anyway, sued the TVA to stop the dam's completion, and the case made its way all the way up to the Supreme Court, which would eventually rule 6-3 decision that completing the dam would destroy the fish's habitat in violation of ESA. But the latest research suggests that rather than being an endangered species that needed protection, the 2-inch minnow acted as a useful way for the dam's opponents to wield regulatory laws in their favor. And that's no different than anybody else doing it. And that really is the problem, that people can take data and manipulate it in a certain way and leave off key elements of it so that they can get their action performed, knowing that people are just burnt out and won't have the ability or desire to expend copious amounts of energy to do that necessary information gathering and scientific research. It took 50 years for somebody to go and look at it. It says, although the Supreme Court held up the protection of the snail darter, President Jimmy Carter would intervene the following year, signing legislation that exempted the Tennessee project from the ESA, leading to its eventual completion. Only to find out 50 years later that it didn't really matter. It should have been done anyway. But again, you have overreach in a different way, right? The presidential authority having the ability to just say, you know what, in this particular instance, instead of just doing the necessary research to show that there is no harm. I'd rather not somebody just arbitrarily decide, I think that it's fine, and there's too much there. All right, the next article is over on the Marvel Channel. Marlon Brando wanted to build a University of the Sea. Marlin University, I suppose, like Marlin. Get it, the fish. Anyway, these scientists are bringing the late actor's vision to life on Tetaroa, I guess. A vibrant coral atoll dotted with sandy islets, the little islands. Archaeologists, marine biologists, and cultural practitioners are working together to improve understanding of a unique ecosystem. So Sarah Kuda over at Smithsonian Magazine, smithsonianmag.com, put the article together, and the deck statement says on Teraroa, a vibrant coral atoll dotted with sandy islets, archaeologists, marine biologists, and cultural practitioners are working together to improve understanding of a unique ecosystem. And so the first time Marlon Brando saw Teraroa in the 1960s, all he could make out was a slender pencil of land on the horizon of the Pacific. Later, during a break from filming Mutiny on the Bounty, he hired a fisherman to ferry him to the atoll and realized Teraroa, part of the Society Islands archipelago in French Polynesia, was more gorgeous than anything I had anticipated. That's a quote from apparently Marlon Brando. After making the roughly 30-mile journey north from Tahiti, Brando found 12 small coral islets or motas encircling a tranquil lagoon. Seabirds soared over thick stands of coconut trees, and sandy beaches beckoned invitingly. So while Brando died in 2004, never got to see the plans for Teraroa, fully realized. But over the last decade, his dream has become a reality. Researchers from around the world are now using Teraroa as a living laboratory, and school children are visiting to learn the traditional knowledge and stories of their Polynesian ancestors, which is great. Hinano Murphy is the cultural director for the Teraroa Society, the nonprofit in charge of conservation, education, and research on the island, or the atoll. So there, see, it's like a little series of islands. And it is. It's kind of amazing. I think that it's beautiful. Let's hope that it doesn't turn into an Airbnb, though. There is a lot more in this article. I won't go through the entire thing because it is quite expansive. But that's what this long form kind of journalism is all about, education here. So I'm going to send y'all over to it. Just follow the link in the show notes and you'll be able to head on over there. I just called it Marlin C. University. All right, let's keep going. The next article is over on the Marvel Channel. Negotiations to prevent a massive port strike resume today. Here's what you need to know. The article is by Quartz or QZ.com. William Gavin. Longshore workers are demanding protections against automation. And unfortunately, I just have to say, that's not really how it works. Nobody's ever protected from automation. And in fact, I think what's going to end up happening is it's just like it has over the eons of existence. Technology is going to usurp the human element of this, and you can scream at the camera all you want. The International Longshoremen Association, or ILA, and the United States Maritime Alliance, or USMX, are set to resume labor negotiations Tuesday in the hopes of averting a sequel to October's massive port strike. The union said that the port employers had convinced the group's then leaders that using semi-automated cranes in the Norfolk International terminals would eventually help create thousands of new jobs. That paved the way for the replacement of traditional equipment that with cranes that have less human involvement across other ports in the U.S. So what seemed like a win for one port turned out to be the project that was becoming the model for automation that would potentially chip away at many jobs at almost every other terminal along the East and Gulf coasts. So in its own statement, seemingly in response to Daggett, the USMX argued last month that the only way for ports to handle higher volume is by densifying terminals. The Alliance of Companies, Terminal Operators, and Port Associations argues that it doesn't want to eliminate jobs but continue using advanced technology, including the semi-automated cranes that the ILA says it regrets agreeing to. But unfortunately, you can't just build more. Companies can't afford it. They're going to start raising rates, and it's going to offset, it's going to offset even the costs that are going to lead to higher wages. You can increase the wages, but you're going to also have to have more people. That means that the cost of goods going through the port are going to have to increase to offset the increases on wages and the number of positions. You're going to have more, even if you do more people, right? It's going to get more expensive. Automation keeps costs low because the sunk cost doesn't keep on getting accrued more and more of a burden. And the people, they get sick, they lose their position, they decide to move on or whatever. It doesn't matter. Countless reasons why a human leaves the position that they're in. And automation actually mitigates all of that because it's in place and it'll just work. And the people that would be, standing there doing something can now stand there fixing the crane or monitoring it or whatever. It's going to suppress wages, though. So there's a lot more to it than there's a whole lot of economics involved in this. But they want higher wages and salary that outpaces inflation and provides more than the small wage increase it agreed to in 2018. In October, the USMX and ILA reached a tentative agreement to end a 3-day strike that included wage hikes of 62% over 6 years, raising average wages to roughly $63 per hour from $39 per hour by the end of the contract. Yeah, if you think that longshoremen aren't making some serious change, you're wrong. So in December, Trump slammed companies' reliance on automation, writing in his Truth Social that the amount of money saved is nowhere near the distress, hurt, and harm it causes for American workers. In this case, I don't know why American workers is actually capitalized in this. Oh, it must be. It's a direct quote. In this case, our longshoremen. He also took aim at foreign companies that made a fortune in the U.S., likely referring to the various international members of the USMX, which such as Maersk and Hapag-Lloyd and MSC. But I guarantee you that dude, if he had his investments in that, he'd be battling it just the same. He doesn't want unions. He doesn't want to fight for anybody. He just wants to make money himself, which we're looking at the face of oligarchy. But anyway, potential devastating impact, it says in September, ahead of ILA's short-lived strike, about 180 associations representing companies across the series of industries warned a strike would be devastating to the U.S. economy. And all hell broke loose. And suddenly it goes away. But then we're back. So everything old is new again. And again, like I said, if you think, let's say, senior leadership, and by senior, I both mean old and in a position high on the totem pole of leadership, represents you, you're out of your freaking mind. Let's keep going, though. The next article is over. It's the everyday people that represent the everyday workers in government are the representatives of the everyday people in society because they are one and the same. But when you become untouchable, you absolutely lose contact with what society is really wrought with. There's a few, but they're actually lower on the totem pole of administrivia of government. And so just look around. Middle class has been hobbled. And if you think somebody making 150 grand is middle class, that's not what it is. You're absolutely wrong. Anyway, let's move on. The next article is over in Non Sequitur News. Woman hears something trying to get into her dog door. Whoa. Internet left in disbelief. This thing literally said hello. Play back the video. One user wrote. Another added a thing of nightmares. So the video that's attached to this has nothing to do with it, but it's Maria Azura Volpe, I think, over at Newsweek.com put the article together. So in a TikTok video shared in December, under the username CrazyDinosaur03, the poster can be heard asking her dog, "What's that sound that you hear?" as the pup leads her to the flap door for her dog, where something keeps tapping as if it's trying to make its way inside the house. That's when she intervenes, opening the flap to see what's trying to break in, only to find a pet tortoise, Seamus, grunting behind the flap door, mad at them for not letting them in. So there's a little video that's attached where the tortoise is at the dog door trying to be let in. Hello? Interesting. Wow. And it has a basketball under it. What the heck? What a weird tortoise. Anyway, if you're missing the video because you're not watching it on YouTube, because this also gets turned into a podcast. There's 1,700 episodes across the spectrum of ohmTown channels and shows. Go and download the podcast. Just do a search for ohmTown. Or Non Sequitur News. Or any of the 6 weekend shows. Anyway. Moreover, they need frequent veterinary checkups, better if done by an exotic animal vet, and they also need access to UVB lighting to help them metabolize calcium and maintain healthy shell growth. So you also have to let them into the house, apparently. Found it pretty neat. Yeah, kind of looked like a cranky old grandpa trying to find the front door. Let's keep going, though. The next article is over in Technology Today. Rural internet deserts in England and Wales to finally get fast broadband. Government announces new contracts to install gigabit level fiber coverage for 131,000 households and businesses. This is what they should have. We should still be doing this in the United States, but man, there is some balkanization there, and regional regulatory capture and whatnot. Anyway, the article is over at The Guardian. Robert Booth is a technology editor, and the deck statement says government announces new contracts to install gigabit fiber. So the last corners of England and Wales yet to be covered by a $5 billion or £5 billion push to widen fast broadband could finally get access to rapid downloads, streaming, and video calls from the government announced 280, or after the government announced a 290 million pound funded contract enabling coverage. So some of these deserts were forced to turn to Elon Musk's Starlink satellite-enabled internet connections, which isn't particularly speedy. But if you can drop some fiber on the ground and connect to it, then gigabit level fiber is great. And it's more secure and whatnot. Anyway, new contracts to lay full fiber connections in areas not reached by private investment would apply in North Wales, including Anglesey and everywhere else, really. The Department of Science, Innovation, and Technology announced. So good on them. I think that this is great. Let's keep moving, though. I'm going to hustle through this. The next article is over on WarCrafters, which is a show all about gaming. Catan, which used to be Settlers of Catan, but apparently there were some misgivings about the name Settlers of Catan. I guess Settlers has a negative connotation. Klaus Tuber's Catan, widely credited with kicking off the modern board gaming renaissance, turns 30 this year to celebrate Catan. Again, it used to be the Settlers of Catan. The global company behind the beloved tabletop brand is refreshing the look and feel of the title for the first time in a decade with a revised 6th edition launching in April 2025. New revised expansions and extensions are also being produced, and Polygon sat down with the managing director to talk about it. I won't go through all of this. Charlie Hall over at Polygon.com put the article together, and it looks like straight out of the box, so to speak. Catan the game, Catan Cities and Knights, and Catan Seafarers is going to be modified after 10 years. The Catan story tells about Vikings colonizing islands long before the dawn of modern Europe, asking players to make their way to a fictional world by trading resources like wood, grain, and sheep. The game's popularity directly contributed to changing American tastes for board games today. Domestic audiences have a strong preference for the so-called Euro-style board games, which, like Catan, eschew direct conflict and instead favor a collaborative style of gameplay with more limited randomness and dice rolling. Yeah, I like card games and dice games more so than board games, but I like Catan. 10 years ago, Catan changed its name, dropping the Settlers of preamble and putting an island's name up front, or the island's name up front, Catan. This time around, the biggest change by far is the new box art, which features a brighter and more naturalistic expression of the Catan universe, complete with hex-shaped fields in the background. So there you have it. All right, let's keep going. The next article, I actually really like Catan. It's one of those games that if it were a computer, it is a computer game, but what I'm bouncing around is Ticket to Ride. Ticket to Ride, I loved Ticket to Ride, but it's a crap game now because whatever the original game was suddenly got hobbled, and then you can no longer play it, and you can't play it over the air. You have to play handheld, like pass it on, and it's frustrating as hell, and I'm just irritated. All right, well, anyway, let's keep going. Would you live above a Costco is the next article. Thrive Living hopes to build thousands of apartments per year, starting with one complex on top of the warehouse chain. The article is over at entrepreneur.com. Sharon Shibu is the author of this. The deck statement says construction is starting early this year and is scheduled to wrap up in 2027. First of its kind Costco with 800 apartment units living above it is coming to Baldwin Hills, a neighborhood in South Los Angeles. That census reporter finds has a poverty rate of 25% higher than the national average. The complex includes 184 apartments for low-income households, with the rest of the units offered as a mixed, unsubsidized, affordable, and workforce housing. It will also have a rooftop pool and fitness center. The Costco downstairs will have 185,000 square feet of space and 2 levels of underground parking. And frankly, I think that this is a benefit for everybody involved. Because if you just build a warehouse, then there's nothing above it. Meanwhile, and it's just dead space. Why not put something livable above it? And I think all warehouses should be like that, as long as they don't act as a particularly dangerous threat to well-being should something catastrophic happen. If a fire breaks out in a warehouse, it can destroy everything, just like any other thing. But if you take special precautions, you can actually limit it to some degree. So now the Costco and everything else is going to have to have much more robust protections in place. The real estate developer Thrive Living is preparing to start constructing the apartment Costco property in early 2025, according to the report published by the Wall Street Journal. And when constructed, the complex will be the first residential development in the country with a Costco right downstairs. Sounds good to me. The project is the first to receive approval under Assembly Bill 2011 or the Affordable Housing and High Road Jobs Act. The California law, which went into effect throughout the state on July 1st, 2023, speeds up the approval process for projects that meet affordability and labor criteria. It will cost $425 million to construct, with work expected to conclude in 2027. All right, let's do our last article for today's Time Machine episode of Non Sequitur News. It's over in Technology Today. The wait is over. NVIDIA's next-gen RTX 50 series GPUs are here. At the end of January, they are to be released, ranging from the 5070 up to the 5090. The price seems approachable, but we'll see if supply and demand mechanics actually turn a $600 card into an $1,800 card and a $2,000 card into a $4,000 card. Matt Elliott over at cnet.com put the article together, and let's see. Jensen Huang, who wore their $9,000 or $10,000 leather jacket, but hey, if you're making millions, you can afford it, right? Makes you very approachable. So the GeForce RTX 5090 says that it's twice as fast as the previous RTX 4090. Some people are sitting there going, it's only 30%. I don't know what they're talking about. Other people are saying that the 5070 is not the same as the 5070 is not the same as the 4090, but it's not. It's actually smaller and a bit faster based on what I expect are going to be the performance results of the actual card when people get their hands on them and start testing them, because it's going to be the new Blackwell architecture and it's going to have DLSS 4. But yeah, $549 for the RTX 5070, and everybody is going to bounce over to it. But we'll see. It's going to have all of this. They're changing the terminology to AI TOPS, which is the operations. So supposedly this is the future, and you're going to have to buy the 50 series cards. AI is in the new graphics card. In addition to DLSS 4, NVIDIA's new RTX neural shaders use AI to compress textures for greater memory efficiency. RTX neural faces use AI to improve the quality of characters' faces in games. There are laptop versions that are going to be shipping in March, and it says will follow the 5090 and 5080 will start shipping January 30th, and the 5070 and 57 Ti or Titanium will follow in February. So you got some time, folks, unless you're gonna spend a mint because what's going to end up happening are people that already have a lot of money are going to get more money by buying up these cards before you ever see them. So good luck. Anyway, that's it. We'll be seeing you at the end of the month. I hope that I can get my hands on a 5070 as soon as they come out, because I'm not going to spend $2,000 on a 5090. I think it's ridiculous. I can't support that. That would be the same cost that I paid for a computer 6 years ago, which is just ridiculous. An entire computer with a 30 series card. Okay, well, that's it. I am Mayor Watt, and I am going to shut down the time machine, and then later today we'll be doing the January 8th episode of Non Sequitur News. So I'll see you in a little bit. Bye-bye.